right, if you could just add yourself into the attendees list, and we'll give everybody a few more minutes to join. Like I said, there are multiple calls going on at the same time. So the first agenda item I have here is in answer to some folks' questions on the mailing list about the meeting cadence. Keep driving from that. I'll give everybody about a couple more minutes to add your names in here. Is there anybody? I'm going to unmute all again too. Right. And there we go. All right. So I'm going to pop back into meeting notes. So everybody should have the ability. I had proposed, and I think at the first meeting, is to try and meet every 2 weeks as a cadence. So that sort of gave us this week from the last one, and we had agreed to meet on today, but I did not post it on any calendar or anywhere. So I think one thing I'm going to suggest is that in the community page, we post the meeting dates so that it's in the GitHub repo, in the OpenShift/community repo on what the next upcoming dates are, so you're not looking for it anywhere special. I think we had a couple of suggestions to move it from 1600 UTC to 1700 UTCs. Is there any objections to that, moving it an hour ahead or an hour later?
So I might have a problem here because my team meets at 7 Middle European time, which is 5 UTC, usually today. So I might be able to get out of that meeting, but I'll have to talk to my team lead.
So was that Christian speaking? Sorry,
yeah, that was me.
Yeah,
that was Christian. And another, for me, Wednesdays would also be good. But yeah, I'm sure I can make Tuesday work though.
Would earlier be better? I can always go earlier because that would get us before all of the internal meetings that are at 1600 UTC. If we did it at
that'd be great. That'd be great for me. I'm not sure about how people on the West Coast would feel about that, but
that would be me, and I could handle it. So far, that's mostly. So why don't I do this? I will make I'll make an issue on the and people can respond to it. And then we'll try and go for 50. I would prefer earlier and to keep it on Tuesdays because my Wednesdays and Thursdays are packed. And we'll see what people respond.
Join on any Wednesdays, and earlier than 1600 would be very difficult because my stand-ups and other internal meetings happen from 11 o'clock Eastern to 12 o'clock Eastern.
Okay, so, and could you say who that was speaking? Because I don't have
Neil Dompa.
Okay, Neil, you're kind of important to this conversation. So I will put it in. If Christian can get his excuse slip from his meeting, we'll go with the later time then.
Yeah, later works. I'm fine with later.
So I'm not really fine with much later than we do it already because it's already 6 p.m. here right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, well, let's create an issue and discuss it on the issue. I'll get back to my team lead, asking him whether I can skip that meeting or else we'll find an alternative time, I'm sure.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll just see who's not in attendance today, but I'll do it as something in GitHub and everybody can respond. Is the cadence of every 2 weeks reasonable? At this point, I don't want to.
From my perspective,
problem
it's
with bi-weekly.
yeah. For me, it's
Bi-weekly.
fine as well.
Okay. And then whatever we resolve it to the GitHub issue, Diane will list upcoming dates on whatever the readme.md page, I guess, for lack of a better one, or I'll figure out another one. All right. So, mea culpa, I should have done this at the last meeting, but I did not. So the next thing, Christian, we had one more pull request. The charter was approved to anyone who has done it, but we have one pull request, which I'm just going to pop over to now.
Put the link in the chat.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Let me see if I can get back there. I'm having
So this is really just a few spacing fixes and really just nothing that's really important. It's just spacing and semantics and just a few fixes. So I was thinking, instead of doing another call for agreement for this, we could tentatively approve this in the meeting per the charter process for this. And if anybody has an issue with it, he can voice up and do that on the PR. I think we don't have to do another call for agreement for this.
Okay. Does anyone object to just making these rather minor changes? And thank you for.
No, I was a little bit weirded out by the fact it was listed as a WIP PR in the first place, and then thrown into hold as being considered something that we had to have, everybody fully consensus on, because it was mostly typo fixes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't want to create a precedent by first pushing into the branch that we were voting on at the time. So
that's fine. Making new pull requests is okay. It's just, it was weird that it got thrown into do not merge hold, got marked as a WIP. And then the email went out saying that we needed to do like a full consensus thing like we did for the first one.
Well, I just removed the WIP because there was actually another fix coming in yesterday from Steven, who isn't here, I think, today. But so, I just pushed that, and it should be, if you find another fix, please do point me to it. I'll fix it. And if you're all fine with it, if we can agree on that, maybe we can all just put a +1 in the chat so we have it formally approved, and then I'll merge it tonight.
All right. Okay, so I'm going to pop that to the
+1.
I just put in the thumbs up on things, so it's like I figured that's good. But I think it's better in this instance, as it's the first thing, to err on the side of getting approval. Probably going forward, if anyone finds any other space issues or grammar checks, just we'll merge them nicely. That said, I put Christian on the spot to do a bit of an FCOS update, if you're willing to do that. And if you need to share your screen, please do so.
I don't really have anything to share on the screen right now. So from the FCOS, it's not really an update coming from the FCOS team, but rather from me working on getting the missing RPMs into FCOS. And I've been hacking on that for the past few days. And those are the OC and Hypershift RPMs, which we'll build on the Prow CI, which we're also using for OCP. I'm just getting sort of a separate pipeline inside there up at the moment, and I hope I can. I'll have something for review by the test platform team that'll handle this or review this. This week sometime. So yeah, this is sort of the state we're in at the moment. We need to get all the dependencies into FCOS so we can run the installer on it and sort of use FCOS as a bootstrap host for an OKD cluster. Are there any questions about this at the moment? So the current plan is to sort of get some. I haven't fleshed out the details yet, and I'll probably need to sync with Clayton about. So my current thinking was maybe we don't need a PR or per PR test for the RPM build, but just master commit builds. But yeah, we could do per PR as well.
Yeah, I would probably say anything that we want to keep working, we should do it. We should start by just adding PR jobs for it, and
okay,
just because I see this happen all the time with RPMs, is people are like, I've got these RPMs, and then someone refactors the build system, and
and then
we've done that every 3 months for the last 10 years. So I don't know that we're going to stop doing it. So maybe that one's probably the easiest. Like we should start with PRs, and if we want to bring in another system, we can absolutely do that. It's just a good way to start.
All right. Yeah, I definitely have some detailed stuff that I want to hash out with you, Clayton. So I'll probably write up something for you tonight. But that's not really for this discussion. I just need to get some details on this. But yeah, this is definitely the next step, getting the RPMs. After that, we'll tackle getting all the operators and the installer ready for FCOS, which is mostly the installer and the MCO, the machine config operator.
Typing as best as I can. Please add in any other commentary you want. We are recording this, so people can listen to it later. So, so in terms of the release for FCOS being available to do OKD 4 with, is there a timeline update?
So I am not sure the FCOS team has set a date in stone yet. From what I've heard, they are definitely planning it for the first, or let's say January. So that's the tentative date I've heard, mid-January. But as I said, I can't really give a guarantee on that. And as we in OKD will, for our initial release, depend on the FCOS GA release, we will release after that. I hope very soon, but right now I can't really give any concrete, nothing concrete. So Q1 2020.
Well, Clayton, you're on the call, and I made up this agenda as we're going along here. Is there anything around the OKD roadmap that we need to review today? Any feedback?
I don't know that there's anything that's come up that's new, but if Christian, is there anything that we've uncovered in the last 3 or 4 weeks around ignition, machine config, FCOS that would require a discussion of changes there?
I don't think we need any huge changes to the roadmap. I was thinking because now I have a more clear view of what's actually needed to make this happen. I might put a few more details in the roadmap, but other than that, I think it's pretty much it'll pretty much stay the same. If there's no more suggestions from the community at this stage, I was going to make a call for agreement on the roadmap. we could also agree on it in the working group, but I was thinking it might merit a formal call to agreement.
I think it would be good to have the vote on it so that we're all on the same page and on the record as such. And I apologize, my screen is rather slow to load. But do you want to make a few more changes? Is that what I just heard you say, that you might tweak it a little bit around ignition and?
Yeah, well, mostly I think the ignition stuff, because that's really the next milestone we're tackling. Right now I'm on the RPM build thing, so that I might flesh that out a little bit more, just to reflect the actual steps we need to take to get there a little bit more in detail. But yeah, generally, like it'll stay the same. So I'll be presenting essentially the roadmap tomorrow at the OpenShift Commons meeting here in Milan, where I arrived today here. And,
oh, good.
So essentially, I'll just be presenting that, and whatever I'll come up with tonight for my slides might end up in the roadmap as well before I send out the call for agreement.
Okay. So maybe tomorrow after the gathering, you and I can sit down and send that out.
Yeah, that sounds good.
I do think there's and this is almost like related to the next one, but I think one of the things is, as we start getting FCOS up, and I know this was something Michael brought up on the email thread around both trying with other operating systems and potentially not requiring the OS to be coupled. Where there's a couple of things going on right now that just doing in various bits of the code base to make it easier to omit things in both preparation of things that we might need for OKD, as well as upcoming supporting like thinner profiles of OpenShift or something like that omit some of the operators, as well as making testing easier. So like work that I've been doing to do SKU testing to test 4.2 OCP with 4.1 nodes that we would also want to do with FCOS as well. There's another effort or another discussion going on. So folks here may not be as familiar with the planned work around the cluster etcd operator, which is, the long and the short of it is the opinionator or the installer today is setting up etcd. We're looking to change that architecturally so that there's an operator that manages membership in the etcd quorum for masters, which would essentially mean once you have a singleton cluster up, you can then grow to 3. And the installer, this is over 4.3 and 4.4 timeframes, so over the next 6 to 9 months, that operator would manage, essentially during install, you'd start a bootstrap node and it would be a full node and you could grow. Now, there's a bunch of other things that assume that there's more than one master, but there have been a lot of discussions around getting to the point where you can run a single FCOS control plane node, as well as RCOS. And while that's not in the, it kind of overlaps, I think, with the medium term bucket for the roadmap, but it's going to be somewhat complex to plumb that into the installer. But if there's folks who want to follow along, I can give an update for that, or have Sam actually come on and give an update for that maybe at the next one. But that's probably the biggest change that I could see impacting some of the objectives that we'd have for OKD and making it easy to do singletons and so forth, even if there might be some compromises still the same way that there are for libvirt. So I just wanted to raise that. I know it overlaps with the next topic, so I apologize if I stole the CodeReady thunder. But
Singletons, as in so you mean like the single node setup, right?
It kind of, there's still a whole bunch. So a single node is not resilient to anything, even rolling updates. And there's various parts of the infrastructure, like operators that have node exclusion rules, the ingress controller, et cetera. So there's kind of the two parts we're looking at. One is rather than the installer setting up etcd and that being kind of an unmanaged thing, the bootstrapping step on an RCOS box would set up a singleton with the controller and then the operator would then see new masters joining and extend the etcd quorum or shrink it as necessary. What I think, like, just from like wearing the OCP hat, the plan is there was no intent to support anything less than 3 masters until the 3 master flow was like totally rock solid, so that you could do like, the end goal is that masters are machine sets or machine deployments, and they have rolling updates, and you can throw away any of the masters and get bigger masters and have that all managed transparently. So it's like a big architectural change. One of the consequences of that is we at the same time wanted to ensure that Bootstrap feels like going from 1 to 3. That means 1 has to work briefly, and then the next step after that, as that starts to stabilize, could be making 1 work really well versus the kind of compromised it kind of works accidentally today. That enablement is kind of structured around the idea that we want to move the etcd quorum under active management, which provides all those big operational wins at scale at a 3 master or 4 master setup. But so there's some overlap there. I just wanted folks to know that that's some of why the single master has been, the single node cluster has just been kind of it is something we can do. It doesn't really work the way that you would expect it to. libvirt kind of works, but doesn't quite work the way you expect it to. I'll have Sam come for the next one, I guess, and do an update on where the cluster etcd operator is and give folks places to go look where they can follow along with that. It seems very natural that the singleton would come along that path, because the goal would be the Bootstrap node becomes a singleton and then adds masters and then gets rid of itself. I think we'd be in a spot there where we could potentially discuss, just letting you stop at the Bootstrap node, but we haven't, it's still really early in that process.
Thanks for the update. Very much interest to take the offer and to listen to Sam Creighton. If that can be organized, would be much appreciated.
And which Sam is that?
That's Sam. I'm going to murder his last name. Xfusion. Sam is.
I'll get into the agenda here and try and figure out a title for that topic.
I think that'll be evolution of cluster self-management with etcd, and Sam would be excited to talk about that, I'm sure, or he will be when he finds out.
Is it fair to say, Clayton, that maybe when all this will be fleshed out, maybe the Bootstrap node will no longer be something which is disposable as of today, and more will be, a living thing, right?
So that's a great question. It kind of depends on what makes sense from the cloud infra side.
Fair point.
Because it may still be one of the advantages is we have to set up the initial ignition for the Bootstrap machine.
Right.
That's different than what the masters get. And so there's a challenge of, the goal of MCD is to be able to bring stuff in, but I think it's one of those topics that it's deep enough that we'll try for it, and we know that it might not work in all cases, because there are a lot of people who want to run single node, and CodeReady needs something like this. We're just not quite. It's very early in the discussion process.
Yep, sure. No worries.
This discussion reminded me of one thing that I added to the roadmap recently, which was in, I think, phase 1, adding libvirt support. And I would actually be in favor of dropping that statement from the roadmap altogether, and instead putting something in that will try to adapt CodeReady Containers at some stage.
I don't think that makes sense to drop it, because CodeReady Containers mostly depends on libvirt being supported as a platform to begin with. So if we want to support CodeReady Containers out of the gate, then that means that needs to move from phase 1 to phase 0.
And CodeReady Containers is kind of waiting for some of this work too. So maybe there is a real problem with libvirt today, which is the design of the libvirt Golang library requires you to basically have the shared libraries available, which works for some use cases, but not for others. So I think I would kind of agree, it might be we need to have something in the short term. The etcd stuff is a little bit further out, And so maybe it's a libvirt initially, but we don't over invest in it. And then we look to accelerate the etcd stuff. The current plan is that very early in 4.3, which branch is supposed to happen soon as stabilization for 4.2 finishes out, we would branch for 4.3, and that would come in very early so that it has time to soak in the limited mode, not the full management mode, but like basically replacing what we do at Ignition for etcd today with something that's just a single controller. Again, it's Sam's probably a lot better than I am to talk about exactly where it is. So we could maybe we should wait to do that or to have that discussion until we kind of see where Sam's at.
Right. My thinking about this was as a bullet point there, I can't really tell how much work it would entail. So because I haven't really used libvirt in the past, and if I were to be the one responsible for implementing that, I would definitely ask for more precise steps that I could follow.
And just like to add to this, there's a bunch of things that like the metal cube guys have been working on that are intended to help make the single, or they need things like metal load balancers when you have L2 connectivity. They're working on Bootstrap DNS that doesn't require an external DNS service. It might actually be that after SAM, we also should have the metal cube guys here to talk and kind of go over what they've done. So that's something Diane and I can help do it, because they're kind of working on a bunch of independent components that would fit very nicely into OKD for some of these less opinionated flows, including singletons.
Clayton, as you're here, I had one question. Can we later, when we have the FCOS platform ready and everything, can we use the operator images on the UBI base images, or do they contain private stuff that we can't distribute freely?
The hope and the goal, at least the initial goal, and it's, I think this is a community thing, is the initial goal would be yes. I think it really depends on how people feel about that, which is if essentially the RPM set is much reduced from what it was in the 3x days because it's either concentrated into the OS or the images are mostly free of external dependencies. Some of the components that are more optional these days, like Elasticsearch and so forth, took a lot of those RPMs with them when they got kicked out. Jenkins, when they got kicked out to be their own operator, Jenkins is the same way. It's currently in the payload, but it's getting the boot for an operator, in which case it'll kind of contain all that complexity on its own. There's still a chunk of RPMs. They're still coming from effectively the RHEL base. They're redistributable right now as part of the UBI setup. I think if people in the community want to move to a different model, I think it's fairly easy to go do that. And I think that would be well within that's well within the asks. As of right now, yes, you can use and reuse and redistribute the UBI images that we publish. But I think it's having an OKD so that anybody can reproduce that content, I think is going to be important. So I suspect we'll just end up needing to have a duplicate pipeline for those, pulling from Fedora as appropriate for those.
Right. Yeah, that sounds good to me. Just to get started off, I was thinking I could reuse them, and
right. The intent is they are reusable right now, but the RPMs that compose them are a little bit like they're like RHEL RPMs, which is we publish the source, but the RPMs aren't independently available.
Right.
The RPM, the binary.
Actually, I don't know if I've ever been able to find any of the sources for those particular RPMs. So
they should be published in the OpenShift channels, but it could be because of the way that they're coming out that they're not a one-to-one mapping between. I will Christian and I will take a follow-up on that. But I think the end result probably would be the way that it's structured is there's a set of inputs that are the RPM repos, and this is like how Brew and OSBS is and how Koji can be structured as well. And so I suspect that we'll just say like there has to be a one-to-one mirror like we were doing with CentOS PASSIG.
Yeah, that makes sense to me, and I'd like to definitely see that use Fedora content as a source for this kind of stuff, because then that way we can. The hope would be that it would make it easier for us to take advantage of new user space functionality as it arrives within the Fedora distribution, as opposed to UBI and RHEL, where it's much, much, much slower.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
well.
for
Go ahead.
90, yeah, for 90% of it, the only thing that's in the container is the Golang binary, and the 10% that aren't, like it's things like ls and ps and bash. Trying to think if there's anything that's actually novel that's not in FCOS, that's not in RCOS or FCOS.
Well,
Like
updated bash might be a big deal for some people.
Yeah, but I mean, updated bash inside of the container images that you're never supposed to go into or use. Like if we need advanced bash inside of the control plane operator, we have other problems probably. So I don't disagree. I just like
I'm just thinking about like when people are doing debugging or things like that, not being able to, if they've written scripts on their host and tested it and then pulled them into the container to run them, it's better if that stuff is newer and supports all the new things. Just saying.
I'm a bash purist, so I might be the wrong person to have that argument with, but I agree with the intent. So I think that
I mean, Bash 5.0, man, they fixed some of the quirks with associative arrays and other weird things. So
I'm still on Bash 3.2.
What is wrong with you?
I'm a masochist. But yeah, so I would definitely agree. Like the Fedora channels are probably the natural ones for those, and I think all we would probably say is we would just have the parallel pipelines wherever. I think that the best part about it would be like what we should probably do is look, the moment we have the FCOS stuff up, we can start drip feeding these and slowly rolling them out. They're very simple Docker files across the board, so it should be pretty easy to go through and get them.
And really the bigger advantage here is that Golang is revved more often in Fedora than it is in RHEL.
So that's a problem though, because Cube is highly tied to a particular Golang. Like
no, it's not.
None of the core libraries will move to Go 113 until it's been validated by upstream. So that's going to be like this. I think the tension between an OKD and a Fedora, which is OKD is making decisions based on Cube first, Fedora second, especially when it comes to things like Golang version. Now, I mean that may be fine if we're just using the what's it called? What's the channels? SCL variants.
Well, I mean, there's also the module variants and stuff like that for different Golang compiler versions, but
yeah, I will say this.
But I'm more concerned about the fact that this is considered a problem, because when I've looked at what's going on with the Kubernetes bring up in OpenSUSE, upgrading to a new Golang compiler generally doesn't break everything. So I don't know what
every Golang version. Every Golang version that has gone out has had serious high-scale regressions in subtle ways, including security issues. And so at this point, I'd say, like, if you're running a different Cube version than what the upstream is running, it's probably going to bite someone who expects it to just work. It doesn't mean that it's going to break commonly, like the obvious stuff, yeah, but like things like the module boundaries. Hopefully that trends down, but 1.9 through 1.13 have been particularly problematic.
That's interesting. I've never heard of this before. I mean, I've seen Golang break during like beta versions and stuff like that, but revving up to new stable releases, I haven't really seen those kinds of problems.
I think this is an ecosystem question as well. I think that's a good one. Maybe we don't have to do it, but like I think this is a like the historical precedent in OpenShift has been to extremely closely govern and guide these things to match the Cube ecosystem version, because client libraries and so forth, that's becoming a little bit less important as we get there, but it's still kind of the habit and the de rigueur. And so if Fedora drifts, I think or if we're drifting in OKD, that is going to cause potential issue, or it will cause issues that I think we can sidestep. And I think this again gets at that: who's in charge? Is Fedora driving or is Cube driving? And I mean, my bias just historically has always been Cube gets to drive versus us driving from the OS up. From Cube down has been the bias, and I think that's just the like Neil, you and I obviously represent the extremes on these particular arguments. So,
Well,
not to
I've
say
dealt
you're
with enough
extreme.
bad upstream projects that I have very little faith in upstream projects for making good decisions about those kinds of things. That doesn't mean that they're all wrong, but historical experience has been they're not really doing it quite right.
Can I
So do
can I
we
jump in?
go, please?
Can I jump in and change a bit the subject, if you don't mind? So just taking the benefit of having Clayton around. If I'm looking at the phase 0, the first bullet point over there is ensure installer serve spec v3. Now, in the installer Git repo, Clayton, there is a PR raised by the OpenShift team, the OpenStack team, with regards to design doc around the ignition shim, bootstrap ignition shim asset. And over there, so my question to you is, today we leverage the Terraform ignition provider to kind of obviously generate us the metadata and everything. Now the team over there, they suggested to kind of come with a shim written in Go and no longer rely on the ignition Terraform provider. My question to you is, yeah.
Go ahead, please ask the question.
Yeah, so my question basically is, what's your thought on this one? Is everyone on board to kind of ditch the ignition provider and not rely on
So,
you know?
I think this is a very general statement, and
Right.
there will absolutely be nuance here, but there's no long-term future for us using Terraform extensively. Terraform is an implementation detail.
Right.
It happens to be convenient. It is not what we like at this point. Like we've come close to discussing this. There's just no reason to force it right now, but like we're completely just tearing out the AWS Terraform flow and using the CloudFormation template would probably be a better end user experience. I don't think Terraform is giving us a lot. So we don't trust it for destroy because we have requirements above and beyond the destroy flow. So I think there's a general pattern of the installer, like folks working on the installer in the Terraform is just something that we happen to use, and its importance is certainly being de-emphasized. Up till now, everybody's done a new platform by adding Terraform, but I actually don't think the AWS Terraform stuff is better than the CloudFormation template that you can use outside the installer. So I don't think this will happen rapidly, but I would expect to see small chunks of Terraform removed. Just like the destroy implementations don't use Terraform at all, for instance.
Okay, fair point.
And Azure will more extensively use resource groups in the future, or resource templates, because the Azure team wants them to, and it fits better with how they run, and there's more features. So Azure currently is not as far in that direction as it could be, but I would expect it to go more in that direction over time as well.
Okay.
So does that mean that for every cloud, not every cloud, every target platform, so that's AWS, Azure, OpenStack, you're re-implementing a mechanism in which you are going to support provisioning, managing, and destroying clusters?
So the dirty secret is that Terraform doesn't work across clouds like that for this.
Oh, I'm aware of that. I'm asking the clarification of that. Are you're going to just drop reusing Terraform as the underlying mechanism?
And it's more of the initial implementation, right, was the Tectonic installer, and it was very heavily like, we're just going to do this in Terraform. And then we grew up at a point where like there's things that Terraform is great at and there's things that it's not good at. So Terraform got relegated more to it is an implementation detail of each provider. As we have been like, I did a quick pass on doing the conversion from AWS to GCP to do the initial GCP, I would say I cut and pasted and then changed every line. And so, and then as we've gone further, we've had to go do even more. So I would say there might be some wins for people to have like a generic Terraform. Like I think it might actually be better for someone to go move to an outside Terraform that copies. I just don't see it being generic because none of it's generic. So yeah, the basic answer is people have started by seeding, realized the limitations pretty quick. As we move more stuff under control, like the machine API, for all the clouds, I think the machine API is the future for machines. And then everything else that's left is like security groups, load balancers, all that. That's all special and custom per cloud anyway. So it's kind of we've standardized the common stuff into machine API and credential mentor. Everything else is kind of custom, but there's less need for Terraform across that because they're not the same.
Fair point. Okay.
I mean, I'm not just, I think that that's perfectly reasonable. I just wasn't sure that was exactly what you were saying, which is why I asked that question.
Yeah. And that we say that sometimes, but I think it's more of just like, we're not going to just go rip out all the AWS stuff tomorrow or next week or next month. It's just in that long-term arc of it works. We're probably not going to touch it unless we need to, but the first opportunity there is for a big like refactor for some other use case, like we get full machine management. Like the moment we have full machine management for masters when the cluster etcd operator lands, I think there's a strong desire to just go and potentially we would tear out all the instance related stuff. And at that point, you're talking more about the shell rather than the cluster. And even stuff like, so coming soon is the adding stuff to the installer so you can bring your own VPC. We're going to have to go document what all the bring your own VPC stuff is for the IPI flows. That documentation is likely to look a lot like a CloudFormation template with some docs. And here's what the default config might be. You can choose to do whatever you want or bring your own. When we do that, that's even another chunk of stuff where Terraform makes even less sense.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks for the answers. Yep.
All right. So I added in the CodeReady Containers and OKD topic. I didn't ask anyone to talk about it. I just wanted to make sure everybody was aware of it, but obviously everybody's aware of it. Is there anyone here on the call that wants to add more to that?
So I have a question about the CodeReady container thing. So I took a quick glance at it and just kind of looked at it, and I didn't see a way to use it with like a Red Hat developer subscription or anything like that. It doesn't actually seem to provide a way to work in that manner, and similar to like how you can get a RHEL developer sub or something like that. So I'm not entirely sure what people are supposed to do with this.
Clayton, any words of wisdom?
I like how you just punted that to me after you put it on the agenda. I thought it just worked, but I could be wrong. I would say
it's because you just spin up, but then nothing works afterwards because it wants a sub, and I can't detach one because I can't make one because it doesn't support developer subs.
Interesting. Okay, I feel like this is Diane. This is something that I think it would be also be good if we're going to talk about CodeReady that we have someone from CodeReady come.
Well, I was wondering who the anonymous CodeReady team was on the blog post. That was my question. So if we have a point person that you're aware of, otherwise I'll go dig somebody.
You poke DV.
Okay.
Daniel Blard.
All right. Will do. All right, we'll move that to the next one and see if we can get that question answered for you before the next one. All right.
Thanks.
All right. Ringmaster. All right. I also have at the bottom here, if you have any other suggested topics, though I think you've all asked a whole bunch of suggested topics already and pickled him with questions. There's a couple things.
So
but I
have
don't
we
see.
moved on to the OpenShift 4.2 code stream now at this point? Because I saw there was a blog post about developer previews about this. So I'm not sure what does that mean from the OKD perspective. Are we starting from 4.2 or are we still working from 4.1 presumably?
So I think in general, like everything that shows up on those things is tracking master, which right now is 4.2 closing, and it'll be 4.3 soon. Like 1.16 will get dropped. I think maybe the open question for Christian is like, what's best for your near term? There's not a lot of dramatic changes coming that I know of, so whatever works for you. Obviously, I don't think we want OKD to drift too far behind, but we could pause it for a while you're iterating.
Yeah,
Well,
I thought I'd try to use the 4.3 master branch once we have it. And because, yeah, most of the changes are needed for Spec 3 support in OCP anyways. So I think we're in a, I'll try to get everything working in master. And only if there's, really need to branch off an OKD branch, I'll do that. But
and just
not
like,
really planning on it.
Go ahead, Neil.
2 introduces air-gapped install as well, which I assume is going to make life easier on the OKD side if we're not tied to a mothership.
Disconnected is different in a sense. Like disconnected doesn't mean not connected. Disconnected means something confusingly similar. So disconnected just means
Disconnected means mirrored content to install from.
So it's still looking for telemetry servers and everything.
I mean, telemetry is technically opt out no matter what version you're running. You just don't get the magic like, oh, we saw that you broke, we go fix it. You didn't know that it broke. You get a fix. That's like, and I think we want that for. I mean, honestly, I think in the long run, that's like a goal for OKD for people who opt in to also get that kind of experience. But the air gapped is about content mirroring, as Neil said. The proxy support can be used in any setup, whether you're in like Dove Cloud or public cloud or private cloud, and that's corporate proxy basically, or edge proxy, boundary proxy, whatever. And so right now, what's going on in the OKD integration stream is 4.2 and will very shortly be 4.3. And 4.3, like it's been a little bit different. Like as Neil noted, that blog post was basically the same thing that we were putting in the OKD stuff. What we've started doing is the OCP cuts go out to anybody who has tried out OpenShift.com. So it's basically like rolling beta, but it's rolling beta the entire life cycle of the master stream. So like the differences between the two code bases is minimal, or the differences are basically zero except the RPM sources and the base images. For 4.3, the first thing that'll happen when 4.3 lands is the core rebase to 1.16. There'll be a brief period of instability, that's getting better and better, everyone, because Cube doesn't change that much. And then you'll see other feature things merge. Everything has to be behind gates. So like looking at the 4x, looking at how 4.2 development went, and I think this deserves like a deeper dive for sure than we'll have here, but like looking at 4.2 development went, there were some brief periods of instability when people were adding things. And so like you'd have, for a couple of hours, an upgrade didn't work. And, that was all tied into the PR system or just release gatings. And we'll have OKD release gatings as well. So I don't know how much value there is in staying behind other than like while we're iterating, other than maybe like a brief period of stability. But we generally just revert whatever broke, even if it's our cause or whatever. So I think even for FCOS and OKD, we can get in that mindset, especially if, Christian, you think you're going to want to have all that stuff in master anyway.
Maybe not initially, but yeah, I think that's desirable. Yeah.
I have a quick question. It's not what I put in the notes, but going back to this conversation about the FCOS release timeline being around January 2020, in terms of OpenShift 4.3, is that when 4.3 is due to drop, or is 4.4 or something else? Like,
So 4.2's coming soon. 4.3, I'd say that's roughly the same time.
fourth.
I mean, it'll probably take us another good couple of months to get the final bits of the FCOS and the CI gating and setup going, but it seems like a reasonable coordination point or estimation point.
Is there any way, or is there any reason for me to think that maybe before the GA of FCOS, we might have a developer preview of OKD or something prior to January 2020? It's just me being hopeful.
I didn't assume that the GA required anything. I didn't assume that FCOS GA had anything to do with OKD other than just.
It was kind of implied with how people were talking that we were waiting on FCOS GA, which seemed weird to me in the first place. So
yeah, I didn't. I mean, Christian, you don't.
Yeah, that was.
Yeah.
That was. I don't know how it got in the roadmap or why everybody's talking about it. I was definitely thinking that we were waiting for FCOS GA, and I think the FCOS team suggested that. But of course, if we can make it work before FCOS is GA, I'll definitely take that as well.
Yeah, and I mean, like, I think it depends on what the definition of done is. I don't know that FCOS GA means FCOS is done in any real sense. And I don't know how much more done it has to be. I mean, just looking at the work that you've been working on, I don't see any reason to not be working on the preview, basically, from the beta releases. So
well, yeah.
I would almost say that they're kind of independent. They just happen to be, the FCOS team is trying to clean things up and get to a stable point, and we're trying to get to the iteration point.
That's what
Okay,
I was confused about in that. Yeah. So,
I'll clarify that on the roadmap.
Okay, so cool. Because you just made me panic there. I was waiting for the panic to the end of the call. But there you go. So, yeah, I'll try and get a team. Do you think we should get a Metal Cube team member, the Daniel B guy that you mentioned, for the next meeting or for the following meeting? Is that overloading? Clayton, that's for you. Because if I can find somebody, I will drag the Metal Cube invite. That's the only thing as a topic for next time, or is that two meetings from now?
That's a good question. I would ask Russell Bryant and see who he thinks is best. I don't know. There's a bunch of people involved in Metal Cube who probably are very interested and who've been following along, but I don't know that they're. I don't know who in particular wants to act as a representative for Metal Cube here.
Okay. All right, cool. Okay, we're almost to the end of the hour. Is there anything else anyone wants to know?
A topic I'd like to throw out as a curiosity. In the 3.x environment, the process for building from source all of the artifacts that were necessary to install an OpenShift cluster was pretty straightforward. It's obvious that with 4 that process has changed because the builds don't work anymore if you just follow what's in the hacking.md in the repository. I'd be interested in an overview of what the pipeline for building the 4.x generation of artifacts looks like, and how the installer then looks to retrieve those artifacts, kind of back to the conversation about the air-gapped install.
I'd be happy to do a deep dive on how OpenShift CI works today for 4 and record that, and maybe we could do that at a Commons meeting, or we could do it here. The Commons meeting might actually be a bigger, I mean, there's probably a huge set of people who are interested. If you guys want to ask questions, though, we could do a separate session or something.
We'll do it. Let's do it as an OCP because I think that's a bigger topic.
Because I think we could, like, that specific question, I could do a 5-minute answer, but I think without the rest of the pipelines, it kind of hangs there. And I think, for OKD to be successful, we want OKD to be able to inherit a lot of that release automation for all the bits that carry over that aren't like Fedora specific, because that I think is one of the true innovations in 4, or innovations is a strong word. I think that is one of the bits of automation that makes it sustainable. And without that, it's basically like what you would try to do if everybody was running RPM builds on their own machines and uploading those to a website or something. So yeah, I'd be happy to go deep.
Definitely, I would appreciate if we can ask questions, because I have tons of questions for you, Mr. Clayton, on the display payload.
And that's actually an interesting one, because like if we do an OCB, I think there's definitely room for questions, but they might not be as specific. We could do the OCB and then do a follow-up after folks have a chance.
Sure.
And we could do a deeper dive on specific topics.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
that
like
works for me.
That way you can get the base content out there. We can digest it and then stumble around on things on our own and follow up with a deeper dive.
All right. Because we're at the end of the hour, just to respect people's time. Our next planned meeting would be 2 weeks from now on a Tuesday, if we keep to the same cadence. But I think, Christian, you said you were not available on the 1st. Are you on PTO that week?
Yeah, I'll be on PTO the first 2 weeks of October. So I'll probably be there again in 1 month, in 4 weeks.
Okay, so 8th, on the 15th or the 22nd? What is it?
They would both work for me.
Okay. So are we as a group willing to wait until the 15th, or should we just?
It's 10 o'clock.
I said it a lot.
Well done.
I did that. I know.
I'm sorry, I have to drop for another meeting.
Okay. I'll let you know the outcome.
Okay. Thank you very much, everyone.
Are you willing to come on the
good.
15th? So let's try for the 15th, everybody, and I'll put a note and I will update the readme.md with the next upcoming meeting. All righty then. Thank you, everybody. It may take me a little while to get this video uploaded because the Wi-Fi here in Italy is not great. So maybe Monday morning, just be forewarned before I get back to fiber optic. Maybe Saturday, we're lucky. All good. Thanks,
Good luck
everybody.
with that.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Diane.
Cheers.
All right.
Cheers.
Care, guys.